All right, welcome to Master of the Game. I'm Juce with Bill Allan. This is our second attempt. The first one, for some reason, I mixed up with my other stream that I have going on later on tonight, and had some weird issue where it made the previous Bill Allan stream just go live or go public for whatever reason. So now that we got that out of the way, Bill had asked me a question about what was the question again, Bill? Go ahead, since some people might not be watching the original.
Okay, so the idea was what, in the evolution of your channel, what did you kind of start off doing and what have you changed?
Yes.
And do you think it's for the better, or do you feel like it's, been something that you regret? Is there anything that you regret eliminating or changing?
Sure. So when I first started my channel, like I had mentioned, it was more to be social in the community with other RPGers, thanks to the YouTube RPG Brigade, which was all YouTubers at the time. Now it's not about YouTube at all. It's just the RPG Brigade and not the same at all. So when we started, though, it was very much about like talking to other RPG content creators or just people that were in the hobby in general that like to run and play games. And we used to do video responses to each other's topics like, what do you think about railroading? Like very basic conversations. And there were a lot of cool people in the community then. We had like Gentleman Gamer, we had Wood WWAD, Dungeon Master Johnny, Samwise7 RPG. Like we had a ton of people. And, any group, you're going to have some drama, and there's been some splinters off of it over the years. And in 2014, I decided, and I was still doing the basic stuff where I just put on a video to talk to other people in the community. It wasn't about like getting subscribers or anything like that. And then 2014, I had a chat during Gen Con because a lot of us couldn't make it. So we decided, let's hang out together as gamers and just talk about RPGs. Similar to like what we're doing here, but it was a lot of us. And it was just no intention of getting views, no intention of an audience. It was just to hang out. And we streamed it. And we talked about how a lot of us played very niche RPGs. For instance, I played Palladium books. I think there was someone who made the RPG and a few others. So we decided we talked about a group where if you played in a game, you then had to play in somebody else's game with the same person. And what it would do is it allow you to try new games. And that started growing really quick. And that's around the time I had met Dave from Nerdarchy through streaming and some of the other, at the time, small YouTubers who are, pretty big now. So again, Nerdarchy, Dave and Ted and all those guys. DMG Info he's also from Quest Givers, and a few other people. So as that started to grow, the group grew pretty quick. I think I went from 500 subscribers to like 1,500 within a few months. And my focus, though, changed from my channel to adminning this group because we grew the group to like 3,500 people within, a year. And that bogged me down emotionally. And so I quit focusing on my channel almost together. I quit doing videos and was enjoying playing in games like the Provokers and stuff. But around 2017, when I met Bill at Gen Con, I was Cody from Taken 20 had purchased my ticket and paid for the hotel room for me to go there. And we had a talk about what the goal of my channel was. And I said, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied with my channel at that point. There have been a lot of videos in the past I'm just not proud of. I don't like the quality. For the time, I was happy putting them out. But there were a lot of videos I just didn't like the quality. Didn't think my content was good. And sometimes looking back, I'm kind of like, ooh, I can't believe I put that out.
I feel you.
So I think I started doing more D&D focused videos because that was the game I played. And when I looked at other people doing D&D videos, I felt like they did the same topic better. So I try not to do that now. I feel like if somebody has a really good take on it, I try not to do it, even though my take might be different. But there are times when I do want to get something out about that topic, and so I do, if I think I offer a fresh take or something like that. My channel in 2017, when we had talked, and I even bounced ideas off of you, was should we focus on, because I was like, I like to talk about mechanics, optimizing, and things like that. I like roleplay, but for me, I enjoy building strong characters or unique characters. And so we had come up with the idea of mastering the game, which I then made Master the Game. And the idea was we were going to talk about optimizing, but then we were going to also take the standpoint of let's teach DMs how to handle that too. So it's not just a one-sided thing. And I kind of got away from that again.
So to be clear, that at that time there were some people who were growing at a rapid rate.
Yes.
By doing those kind of player-oriented tips, right? For whether like Dawnforged Cast had the series with 5e about how to build the characters, and Cody from Taking 20 did, and
not yet. I don't think they did before that.
It was right at that point where like that things
Yes.
were. This was like the primordial point of some of these channels exploding, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to give you context,
Nerdarchy, yeah.
Nerdarchy did build guides, but theirs were about like, hey, let's build Batman in 5e. Let's do this. And sometimes they would talk about some really powerful stuff, but they wouldn't say, hey, how do you optimize this? Or let's talk about this really broken class. I think at that time, so Cody had done his master series for Roll20.
Yeah.
And Dawnforged Cast was still waving the Pathfinder flag. Not in 2017. I think he still was hanging on to some of the Pathfinder ideas, and he had tried to do a couple videos of like, oh, look at these astronomical numbers you can hit with these multi-classes. And he's done it a couple times. But Cody was focusing on Starfinder. And so when I talked about it with him, he's like, you better do something with this quick or I'm going to steal this idea. And I said, hey, no problem with that. But, obviously the first day of Gen Con, which was the morning after we had talked about this, me and Cody, obviously my father had passed. So I wasn't in the right mind space for a couple months. And by the time I got in the right mind space, there was so much going on that it took longer to get into it. In fact, I didn't start my stuff that I planned on in 2017 until last year. So to give you like an idea, it took me 2 years to get back around to everything I was planning on. And I still haven't finished it. There's things I've written that I haven't made videos for. But again, I was always under the impression, at least then from talking to Dave, I should find a focus for my channel. And that's not how my brain works. I'm very much I like to do something like this, but then I like to jump to something new. And you know what I mean? I don't think I have ADHD or anything, but I'm just not able to do one thing. I like crafting, so every once in a while I'm going to do crafting on my channel, or miniature painting now. And so at the time I regretted being too broad or too much of a variety. And so I did try to focus down. But once I did that, I'm like, no, I need to branch out and do what I love, because it gets me, I create more consistent content. And I shouldn't worry about what other people think. So that's where I'm at with my journey with YouTube. I do now what I like to do, and I'm not worried about a target audience as much. My target audience is people who like me. It's no longer people who like D&D or build guides or stuff like that. Target audience is for people who enjoy me and the community aspect of interacting with me and some of my friends. And I love it.
I think that I have a similar trajectory. I mean, my channel started as just a dumping ground for all of the things that I was interested in. And what blew up happened to be the D&D with high school students series. But, I
love that series, by the way. I've watched a couple of those videos, and you have an alternate or rotating cast because of your classes, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, the seasons are based on school, on semesters. So it really just comes down to who's available. And a lot of times it's worked out really well, and other times it's been a total mess. But, it's funny because I think if I had just only done the D&D with high school stuff, I would have become bored.
Yes.
Like you were saying, because that wasn't the first content on my channel. But the first content on my channel was, DM tips and crafting videos, because I had gotten into, actually the very first things were Dwarven Forge unboxing videos.
I think I remember seeing those. I also remember your VHS videos of your old RPG days.
Well, and that's, that's the thing is like, I think about it, and there was a point very early on in the crafting community, when like DM Scotty's crafting group on Facebook was like the place, right?
Yeah.
And I had taken so much influence from him and other terrain crafters and stuff. And at this point, I wasn't even painting minis; it was just crafting.
Yeah.
But I'd gotten so into this great hobby that was linked to my love of gaming, and I was making videos, and I was getting a lot of really good feedback, and like a few of my crafting videos have like thousands of views, right?
Yeah.
Which, and I was doing it pretty low tech. Like, even though I'm a video guy, I was shooting most of my videos on my Samsung Galaxy S3,
Yeah.
which even back in 2016 was old. But
I have a Sony Handycam from like 2005 that I was
Yeah.
filming videos in 2015 on.
yeah.
It's awful.
But I mean, it's kind of like what you said, where I wasn't content just focusing on the crafting thing. And, I felt like I had more to bring to the table with decades of gaming experience. And like you, I still have this backlog, like where I can't even keep up because we have 3 different shows regularly, plus kind of special one shots here and there. The regular content is keeping me so busy that it's hard to branch out and do other things, as much as I'd love to. When I see people post things online like, hey, we're looking for an extra player for insert game here, right? And I'm like, yay, I want to be that extra player, but I don't have time,
Right.
But I'm trying to make more time, because I think that one of the things that you mentioned that resonates with me, at least, is that in a perfect world, we would all have the time to do everything, right? To work, to make time for our family, to play in games, to run games, to paint minis, to make terrain, but it's all a balancing act.
Right.
And I think the guys who we all know mutually, who made the jump to like doing this full time, that's why they can do it full time, because they made the jump. It's the catch-22. Like, either, if you want to do it all the time, you have to do it all the time. Right. And if you can't, then you can't.
And you have to do it at a high level.
Right. And the production quality's got to be there. Yeah, absolutely. Like, so I think, for me, despite my years and years of experience in both gaming and in video production, it's still a challenge. Even though I have those advantages, it's still a challenge to maintain consistency and make that content happen. But I will say that I have a lot of, support. I have support from the channel community and subscribers. I have support from my patrons on Patreon, and from just like friends like you and Cody and Dave from, and Ted from Nerdarchy. Like, there's a lot of us who kind of came up, so to speak, at around the same time, and we're at different levels, right? Like, I remember when, Cody was first starting off his channel. I remember I was like one of the first 100 subscribers for, Jeremy from Black Magic Craft, like,
right.
Wylock, all those guys, V. I remember V, starting her channel, and like, so, and so a lot of us skyrocketed, and then some of us kind of are where we're at.
Yeah.
So, moment of truth. But like, I sometimes get frustrated, and I sometimes I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, I'm putting out like crazy amounts of content. Why isn't my channel as big as so-and-so's?
Sure.
And I'm sure you probably share some of those feelings too, where you're like, how is it that disproportionate? But to me, I think
I understand why, though. Like, so I've looked.
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, so Cody knows. I've called him out on this. He makes very catchy clickbaity titles and thumbnails, and it motivates people to click it. But he gets a lot of hate in the community for it. Like, not in the community, but like from people on like D&D groups and stuff. They're like, oh, it's that guy again. You know what I mean? Like, he'll do something like, oh, is this ability broken? Because I actually did I have a series that I've worked on, and I've only put out, I think, 1 or 2 of the videos. And I did a counter take to, I think, Healing Word being overpowered, was one of them, I think. And I
Mhm.
did Spirit Guardians. And the reason I did my video on Spirit Guardians is because in my Tomb of Annihilation game as a player, I spammed it through like 3 dungeons in a row, and the DM couldn't touch me, and the other players didn't get a chance to shine whatsoever. You know what I mean? I messed up a bunch of Terrafolk. So I did the video based on that, and I offered solutions on how to counter it. And my take is that it wasn't actually broken, but my title was that it was. And people freaked out, and it got a ton of views. But Cody or even Dawn Forgecast or other people have done videos like that. And I got a ton of subscribers when I did that video. But I didn't like all the backlash. It gave me a gross feeling. And so that's why I haven't done a ton of those videos. But I have like 30 videos planned to do like that. It's just my intention is to space them out so that I can mentally handle the criticism I'm going to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, it's time. Like, I know I could do the SEO stuff and I can do the thumbnails and the titles a specific way. But I'm a little lazy with my titling and stuff.
Well, I mean, I agree with you certainly, you know, and I mean, Cody and I have talked about this stuff too.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole world of things that anyone could do to improve their channel. Right.
Yeah.
I think he is, you know, like, he has mastered search engine optimization.
100%.
He's, you know, he's mastered thumbnails, and, you know, the overall appearance and consistency of his videos. But, you know, he's also a salesman. Like,
100%.
I mean, literally he comes from a background in sales. So he knows how to like work people, whether it's in person or, you know, through the camera. But like, you know, and I think that's awesome. And I don't mean to misrepresent myself. Like, I'm not jealous. I'm like proud of Cody and
I do get jealous of some people at times.
All those people. Well, I mean, I guess anybody would, but I guess what I mean is like, there are moments of doubt, even I think at anyone's level, where, you know, no matter whether you have 100, 1,000, you know, 50,000, 100,000 subscribers, where you're like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why isn't my channel growing like so-and-so's channel? I put out just as much good stuff as so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what it comes back to kind of bring it full circle is, you know, a little bit of what you said. And what I was saying is that, you know, we have to do this because we want to, and because we love to.
Yes.
I think that has to be there as a component first, and the following is a reward for that, but it can't be the only reason. Because I would go crazy if all I cared about was growing subscribers. I would lose my mind.
Yes.
So I have to first and foremost make the things that represent Bill Allan World, just like you have to make the content for your channel, you know. And I feel like I think a lot of people get it. The people who follow us, the people who subscribe, the people who are in the chat right now, in the middle of the day for some of us. But, you know, they get it, man. And I think that authentic content means something. I hope it does, you know, because I'm doing it for me to make things, and I'm doing it to build a community. And you mentioned community multiple times. Yes. And I think that sense of community is what, you know, connects a lot of us.
Yeah. So
all right. I have a hot take question for you now.
All right, go ahead.
So first of all, just to acknowledge those of you who are watching this live, welcome. We got all the technical kinks out, but just wanted to give a shout out to Wally, Barking Cricket, Yodestein, and Adams. John, thanks for being here.
You're a great
and
host,
if you guys have, well, you know, I do it a little bit, but if you guys have questions for me or Juice about games, about content and stuff, just pop it in. And as we're going through discussion stuff, we'll try to address those. So right now, since we're live, let's talk about some real things.
Okay.
In the Twitter sphere and the gaming community sphere online, I would say that the last couple years, but specifically, I guess more within the last couple months, we have seen some really big things happen. Things that relate to community. things that relate to, people feeling excluded, feeling abused, feeling attacked. And on the flip side, people demanding, more inclusion, more diversity. And you see this response, right? And it's the whole spectrum. I don't want to say the political spectrum, but it's kind of a spectrum of responses, right? You see people responding immediately that, we want to include everyone. We want diversity. We want, gender identity, racial identity diversity, ability and disability diversity. We want inclusion and being supportive. We see people who are supportive, but also, a little guarded about what they perceive as their community being invaded by people who are different.
Right.
And then you see, quite frankly, on the furthest side, the people who maybe don't want inclusion and diversity and aren't interested in politics entering their game.
Or don't think it's a real issue.
Right. And I wonder, Juce, because you and I have been to some conventions and we have participated in online events with people, fundraising, that kind of stuff. How much as a content creator do you feel we should support inclusion or represent things? Because I'm going to say, as a white, cisgendered, privileged, male, I do want to support inclusion and I do want to support diversity.
Yes.
But I also don't want to seem fake. Like, I don't want to just make a D&D show with Black people who happen to also be trans so that I'm popular. Like, if I do that, it's because, you know what I mean? Like, so where do we find ourselves in that? Like, how do we try to be inclusive and to support diversity and support people in the community from all different walks of life and backgrounds and ethnicities and races and identities without being fake, like without, recruiting
forcing
diverse people.
I wouldn't say fake, but without forcing it, right?
Without forcing it. Cause like, that's where I feel it can be a catch-22 sometimes.
Sure.
Like, I want to be authentic.
You don't want it to come across like you're only talking to this Black person to earn favor because they're Black.
Right. Or this trans person because they're trans. I mean, basically, I guess, that's kind of a question that I think about. And, especially in all these online discussions that have been going on. And I want it to be real because I consider myself a pretty open guy. Yeah. But, what do we do? Like,
so I'm kind of glad you bring this up. It is a very hard question for me to answer because in my journey of learning, I would say, because my takes have changed over the years quite a bit, and I'm trying to be better in general when it comes to this. Me and my wife have had talks about things where she has said that I mansplain things to her, or she sometimes feels like in some of our games I will favor other people in our games, and she thinks it's because they're men over her as a woman sometimes. And so I actually had a conversation with her recently, and I said, well, for example, with 5e, she hasn't read the book. She hasn't played it as much as some of these other people. So for example, if I'm referring to my Descent game, which has Nate from WASD20, Luke from the DM Lair, Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and then Paula, if it's a rules question, I asked her last night, I said, who would you ask a question to about rules? She said me. And I said, well, why me? She said, because you're my husband. And I said, okay, but I don't favor you because you're my wife necessarily. I would go to the person I think has the best understanding of the rules. And I said, I said, if it wasn't me, who would you ask? And she said, Luke. And I said, cool. I would probably do the same thing because I think Luke knows the 5e rules really well. I said, whereas I might refer to you if we're talking about 2nd edition D&D because that's what you grew up on. That's what you know. That's what sometimes you refer to when we're playing 5e. So there's that aspect, right, of not playing favoritism. But some people, when you choose like somebody else, they feel like you're choosing them for other reasons. Now, when it comes to bringing people on like streams and stuff, I actually, I used to do one shots that I would purposely choose only one person I knew, and the rest would be the first come, first serve, or the people that the characters they made fleshed out the group better, and I would bring them in no matter who they were. I think that's how I played with Juve and some other people. I've always wanted to play with like DBJ, Dave Brian Jackson, I think is his name. I always mess it up, but I've always wanted to play with him because he's awesome. You know, and we want to play with our friends, right? That's we want to make sure we're gonna have a good time when we're playing a game. I don't think I set my games up to pander to an audience. And so I think that's one of the issues there that I think some people will go, oh, I've had people when I post my game say, oh, it's just another bunch of white people, you know? And that kind of bothers me because I didn't choose them because they're white. I chose them because I'm friends with them, you know?
I feel
tough.
like that, you know, you're more likely when you mention like the one shots and stuff, you're more likely if you just find some random group of people at a convention or at, you know, an online way to meet up and get into games with people, that you're gonna meet different people than you would in your normal physical surrounding, right? And I think that applies for anyone, right?
Right.
So
the chat's, by the way, saying I do mansplain things, and they're right. I over-explain everything, even to men, though.
Yeah,
White men.
but I think I think to me, you know, when I think about the conventions I've been to or online games I've played with or in, you know, I can't think of a situation where I've ever been like, man, I really wish that so-and-so kind of person wasn't in this game. You know what I mean? Like, I think most of us are pretty open to playing like games with other nerds. Now, that said, I do believe that play style and table chemistry is real, right?
Yes.
And that you can have, you know, like a lot of differences even in a homogenous group. So let me give you an example. Over the decades, right, I have played D&D and other games with a lot of different people. I have played with old school, you know, people who've been playing for 25 years with whom I was absolutely bored out of my mind. And then I played with people who were old school, who I was inspired by. I played with people who were newer, who just didn't get it. And I was like, this is not the game that is for me, you know. And then I played with, you know, so I feel like regardless of experience, regardless of, you know, race, gender identity, ethnicity, what have you, I think it's kind of about
disabilities or whatever.
It's kind of about the people, you know, and what they play and how they play that makes me want to play with them or not want to play with them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
it's not their identity. It's not their skin color. It's not their abilities or disabilities. It's more like in the magical game world that happens up here in our imagination, would I want to hang out with that person? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, is my character going to be cool with their character? I think that, to me, if we as gamers could just remember that and focus on that, like, that could be, you know, what brings down the barriers and creates more inclusion.
So you're basically, I see where you're coming from. So I used to believe in like merit-based hiring, right? I used to believe, oh, you hire the best person for the job. This is an opinion that has changed over the years, and there's reasons for it. So I grew up a few minutes out of Detroit. I would say like 30 minutes. And it is near impossible for a lot of those people to get out of Detroit. It is really hard for them to move up, you know, because the deck is stacked against them. You know, they might have a similar GPA, but someone will go, oh, but they're from that school that's not as good as my school. I went to a really good school where like less than 2% of people didn't graduate, right?
Yes.
In fact, 2 years ago, everybody graduated except for one student, and every single one of them, except for like 10 people, went to college. So that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so people would look at it and be like, well, you have had a privileged upbringing, you know, all this stuff, which is true. So what do you do to help the communities where they aren't able to do that? And so you do kind of, I'm not saying I'm pro affirmative action, but at the same time, I'm coming around to being pro affirmative action as I learn more, because I do want to see all boats rise with the tides, right?
Yeah.
And I understand by doing that, you might be maybe unfairly not employing a white male, right?
Right.
Because maybe you want to employ this female that's white, or you want to employ this trans person, or you want to employ this black person. And I think that is the only way to get them noticed and to help. And so when it comes to like playing D&D and stuff, if you want a diverse community, you have to give opportunity. There's not a ton of, minority streamers, but they're out there. And I wouldn't say that a lot of them are well known. You know what I mean? Like offhand, I just recently learned of Cypher of Tyr. I think she does stuff on the D&D channel. In fact, I didn't really. She was supposed to come on my channel, and then during the Black Lives Matter stuff for the Blackout Day and stuff, she was going to be on that day. And we had talked that morning, and I still didn't know she was of color. And I had said, hey, I'm going to take this day, the next few days off. I'm mentally overwhelmed with everything going on, and she agreed. And then I realized later, oh, she's a black woman. And I was like, oh man, I wish I didn't do that now. I wish I went live with her, because I want to give people like that a platform.
Right.
And I know she's got a bigger audience than me too, which is like, now that I've even looked into it more, she's more well known in the overall D&D community.
Yeah.
I do want to bring diversity onto my channel. Like you said, it's hard to go about it because I don't want to seem like I'm pandering, but I'm not. And I think most people who know me know I'm not. I've played with trans people. I used to run D&D for 2 trans people in Grand Rapids. I have a lot of friends over the years that are gay. Here I am, that guy, that white guy. I have friends who, I don't mean to come across that way, but I do want to elevate those people.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I think when you're being honest with yourself, and with other people, I feel like I would be comfortable asking people, hey, do you want to play in a one shot that we're going to be doing? For whatever, or do you have any interest in this Call of Cthulhu campaign that we're going to be doing, blah blah blah. But like, with just like in my own example with D&D with high school students, we're kind of a homogenous school. We're a huge school, but with a very small minority of people of color. So have
you reached out to any of those students at all? Or maybe even any of like the gay or trans or anyone in those groups?
Well, I mean, so I don't want to out people.
Yeah, you don't have to.
I have some, like I won't say who, but some of the cast members over the seasons have been.
Sure. And they're minors, and it's,
Right. Well, and now they're not, so it's not like, woo, but
Yeah.
But I think it's like, it was one of those things which kind of, started this discussion about this topic was, I do have from time to time one or two kids who are black kids, maybe out of a semester with 40 kids. And that's not every semester even. That's how big our high school is and how much of a minority we have. So, for me, it's like, I don't want to pander. I don't want to, make it fake. And I did actually, have a student who was one of the kids who wasn't in my class, but he was friends with some of the kids who were on the season 3 cast. But then he graduated. So, like I felt weird about like, hey, do you want to play in D&D with high school students, even though you're in college now?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
have you thought about doing a D&D with college students?
Yeah, we've actually done a couple, and in a way, the Bard Odyssey. I don't know what just happened, Juice, but my box disappeared.
Yeah, I accidentally minimized the Zoom call because I was trying to view chat, and so then I had to turn off your camera and turn it back on for it to work.
No problem. But yeah, we've done some D&D with college students. Based on scheduling, it's a little more challenging, but one of the cool things that came out of some of these experiences is that the Bard Odyssey is basically a spin-off from D&D with high school students.
Cool.
season 3, and it's allowed me to keep in touch with some of those kids who graduated.
Yeah.
And add in some new people who weren't on other shows, but were part of our environment at the school.
Yeah.
And we've only done 6 episodes, and a lot of the problem with that was the quarantine for those guys, because they were college students. They were kind of all over the place. So I'm looking forward to coming back to that, because, and this kind of segues into another thing. With your channel, do you find that ongoing campaigns with the same cast have a greater response from your audience? Or do you feel like one-shots are more attractive because they don't require the dedication to binge watch a whole season? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that discrepancy?
Episode 1 of a campaign is always your biggest. That's unanimous from everybody I've talked to over the years. Because people have a hard time jumping in after that. And then on top of that, one-shots are far more successful when it comes to views. Like I did a Call of Cthulhu one recently that went really well, and from a view and watch time standpoint. But ultimately, the only reason I even played Call of Cthulhu, because I was actually not opposed. It's not my style game necessarily.
I remember you chatting with me about that. Like I was like, dude, how could you? It's amazing. And you're like, I'm not really into like mystery horror things.
Yeah.
And I felt that, and there was respect, I get it. It's not for everybody.
I like to play a hero and kill stuff. And, like I grew up playing I grew up pretending to play Link from Legend of Zelda because my aunt would play Zelda in front of me. Yeah. And I couldn't play. So that was like what I wanted to do. And so, the idea of swords and shields or martial characters to me was everything I wanted to do as a kid. And so as an adult, I've resorted back to all my kid stuff. Now, I will admit, the first time I played Call of Cthulhu was back in 2015. It was run by a good game master, lore keeper, whatever they're called, referee, keeper. It was run by a good one. It had great players. It had Lloyd Collins, Andrew Knapp, like Robert Ogre, people I love playing other games with. So it wasn't any of their faults. It just didn't appeal to me. My idea going into that was, okay, I should be tense. I should feel scared, something along those lines, right? I didn't feel any of that. So for me, it didn't meet the expectations that I gave it. And, now when I played with Sean Connors, it was less like that. So we did a heist. I'm not going to go into it. If you guys want to check it out, go check it out. It's very colorful. But we all played a different character in a heist. And we were waiting for a pickup at the end of the night for the loot, basically. And, things happen. It was done in almost like a Reservoir Dogs style of game.
That's the one that I was going to play in, but I couldn't make it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it was really good. And there's a chance now. If you would have asked me the day before, I would probably said, yeah, this would be the only and the last time I'll probably ever play it. After that session, I talked to my wife and I said, look, this is not something I would ever play a campaign in, but for a one shot, it lends itself to some good storytelling. I would happily purchase this game if you wanted to play it again as a one shot with different people or whatever. And there's still an opportunity to play with the same keeper as last time in a future game at some point. So maybe even some of the same players or whatever. We're not planning anything yet, but at the same time, it's out there that we might do it again sometime. And I will probably play it again.
That's well explained and well said. Just from the live chat, I see that there's a little mix. Some people are saying that they appreciate watching the character progression and the cast building. Other people are saying that, it's refreshing to see new people. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because I feel like even just, with feedback from the live chat, it kind of is representative. Like I get a lot of comments where people love seeing, these kids over and over and they see the growth of them as gamers strategically and mechanically, but also as role players from the ROLE part.
Which if you look at your stats, I bet your very first one has more views than all the rest.
Oh yeah. I mean, so that and Pete, like I've explained the backstory on this a million times, so I'll keep it short. the first season of D&D with high school students was a total fluke.
Yeah.
Like it was literally an accident. We happened to have a bunch of D&D stuff set up in the studio because I had been working with Brian Thomas from Initiative Coffee Company to do his shows. And the kids saw it and they were basically lazy and they didn't want to do their final semester film projects. So they asked if they could do a D&D show, which at first I was like, no. And then because I knew they were just copying out. But then I was like, well,
it's kind of a new
maybe
thing.
we can make this educational. So I made them do all the tech, all the lighting and camera and sound stuff, directing it, you know, and it just blew up. And every, you know, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of views the first episode of season 1 has. But it gradually goes down from there. But, you know, I think now I'm lucky if a single episode of any of the shows clocks in at 1,000 views.
Right. Yeah, you're killing it.
But like, you know, to me, I see that in that evolution of channel content and in the shows came a vision, came that purpose and that mission of, you know, helping people get into gaming. And I mean, my content's been very D&D focused because of the shows. Yeah. But the gaming tips that I give are pretty universally applicable, I think. And I think people can learn from watching other people play, which is why game streams are so prolific. Like there's so many out there, right? Yeah. It's funny. Who are some of your influences? Now I'm going to say this first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll answer short. Okay. It might shock you to know that I don't really get into Acquisitions Incorporated or Critical Role. Okay. I've tried. I know some people would be like, Bill, you're a fool. Like, they're okay. But like, I don't know. I will say that when the Critical Role people did Undeadwood, which was their like horror Western vibe miniseries, that had me hook, line, and sinker. Like I have watched all of those episodes multiple times, like just enthralled with their stuff. Okay, now who are your picks? If you were going to tell people what inspires you and
So a few things. So obviously I played in Provokers, which at the time we were getting like 120 live views back in 2014 and 15. Okay. It doesn't even get that now, I think. I think if you go watch it, they'll have like 20 or 30 people watch it live. But that was something special to be a part of. And we knew after session 1, which was supposed to be a one shot, that this was something cool. Yeah. And throughout the campaign, we had like people doing fan art for us and stuff. Like even to this day, like I don't think I've ever had so much pride in a game that I played in, you know, and it was really cool. So that was that. I just want to say that. So if you haven't checked out, it's on Matt Click, A Fistful of Dice's channel. But the one that I love to watch is Acquisitions Incorporated. To me, I know it's more goofy, and I don't typically like goofy games, but they mesh well. I love Chris Perkins as a DM. Like people say Matt Mercer. For me, Chris Perkins is the guy. Matt Mercer seems great. I watched him run his game for Stephen Colbert. That was kind of funny. I have not watched the right Critical Role shows in order to say if I like it or not. In fact, I've only watched season 1, the first couple episodes, and I didn't retain any of it and struggled because their quality wasn't as good. People have said jump to season 2, and I need to do that. But I don't actually watch a lot of live streams. I run, typically you can see me run up to 3 games a week on my channel. And then I do mini painting with my wife 2 times a week. And then obviously I'm married, so I want to spend time with my wife at least 1 or 2 nights out of the week. Or work on videos, which I don't do enough of for what I want to do. So I don't watch a lot. But yeah, I would say Acquisitions Incorporated is always one. I don't listen to their Penny Arcade stuff that's in podcast form. I just watch their live shows from PAX, and I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, and part of me thinks like I've watched clips from different live shows, and I mean, I will acknowledge like Perkins, you know, is great at running the story, and the chemistry with their guests is usually on point. and there have been some cool moments, I think, but I don't know that if you ask me to describe the storyline or their lore, that I would be able to do that. You know what I mean? I haven't absorbed that quite as well.
It definitely, it's right now, it's a Forgotten Realms, but it's very goofy how they incorporate it. You know, like a lot of stuff goes against type, or some stuff really digs into type, you know, like bearded women sometimes, or, you know, oh, the rogue is going to swing from a chandelier in a cavern. Like it's off the wall crazy, but it's funny. And but I do like how Chris Perkins is a yes DM, yes and, or yes but. I feel like Chris Perkins runs almost a perfect game for what his players want. Does that make sense?
Yes. And that, I think that it dovetails into a nice topic too.
Yeah.
About, you know, how as game masters do you gauge your group? So
I'm terrible.
Well, I mean, here's the thing though. I think we could both agree, right? That when you know the people you're playing with, it's a little easier because you know them. You can gauge their play style. You could be reactive. But suppose that you have a one-shot with some people you haven't played with before, or you're at a convention. And this question actually goes out to you guys too, who are watching this live. What as a game master do you do when you are with an unfamiliar group to try to pick apart like what gets them, what hooks them into the game? What are some of the tricks maybe, or what are some of the just kind of tools that you use in interpersonal communication to try to evaluate and assess who these people are and what's going to get them into your game?
So that's an interesting question. So one of the things I need to do a better job of, I think, is my description pregame of what to expect, first of all, because I think you can weed out players that wouldn't fit in that. Like, for example, if I know that I want a heavy social, you know, kind of session, I should put something that's going to imply that in my description ahead of time. That way, if I have somebody who doesn't want to do social and they see that description, they're not even going to say, I want to play in that game. You know what I mean? Because if you want to run a specific style, you need to be clear up front.
Right.
I'm not good at setting the tone in my description up front. In fact, I think I'm pretty vanilla at it. When I run one-shots, I tend to do pretty formulaic stuff. So I'll have like, okay, I'm going to let the players role play with each other and get to know each other for about 20 minutes. Like I time it out. Like if I know it's a 3-hour session, it might be a half hour letting them role play with each other. If they're not, I'll throw an NPC in to kind of help encourage it. And the ones that seem comfortable with it are the ones I'll usually jive with, and I'll pull it more out of them. I'll try with the more shy ones, but if they're not latching on, I won't force it, and I'll just keep the focus on the others. I then also like to incorporate some kind of exploration thing, whether it's traps or just some rolls to loosen them up and get them rolling some dice after that.
Yep.
And then I get into at least a minor combat where there's not really a real threat, but it lets them, again, do something cool. I encourage them to do what I call Hollywood moments. Like, I don't care if you want to do the, you know, jumping off of something. Yeah, I'm going to make you probably do another roll, but I'm going to get you extra damage or something. Might also give you inspiration because I want people to have fun with it. And then I usually put in a puzzle that I'm not good at puzzles, so I'll look stuff up online and fudge something together. And then I usually have a big boss. That's almost all my one-shots in a nutshell. Might have a little bit of investigation, but nothing too hard. And if I know the people, there's a good chance there's going to be a TPK as a result of the big boss. If there isn't, I let them narrate what happened to their character after that. Like, what was the rest of their story? Tell us in the next, 2 minutes, and let them narrate that. So that's what I do for one-shots. And
that's pretty interesting, that because I sometimes I wonder as a DM, like how challenging does a one shot need to be? Like really at the core, because in a one shot there probably isn't going to be a follow-up game. It's not going to be attached to a long-term campaign. So in theory, a TPK is not really a big deal because maybe those people don't have a strong attachment to those characters.
But I let them know up front there's a good chance they'll die. That's the other thing. I will tell them before the game, I'll say there's a good chance your characters will die. And I always try to give them a resolution to the story. So, for example, with the game, I had like Marquise, Hart, Cody, and some other people. And I don't remember what the premise was, but they ended up fighting a Balrog at the end. And I
Oof.
think some stuff was happening, and there was a puzzle to killing it. The puzzle was that there's these orbs that were opening the portal. It wasn't big enough for the Balrog to get completely through yet. And so once they figured that out, they killed it. But obviously, when you kill a Balrog, it lets out that fire energy in 5e that explodes outward. And I think I killed everyone, maybe even except for one. I think Cody even talked about it in a video once, saying that that's the only time he had died at one point. At that point, and I'm sure since then that's changed. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
Well, we got some interesting comments from the live stream. I think that like Flex says that I think a good one shot works best with experienced players because they know the game mechanics better. To make it an entertaining show to watch. And I kind of agree regarding games that are streamed. Now, I think at conventions, sometimes I almost prefer having a mix of like people who don't have a lot of experience, and then some people maybe who've played a little bit who can be almost like, mentors or assistants to the DM to kind of help the party move through the storyline. Yeah. But I think Flex has a point with something that's being streamed.
I agree.
Because then you're spending less time, dealing with mechanics because people kind of know what they can do and what they can't do. Then Roll Stats had an interesting series of points.
I agree. So let me read this one because I actually have some. So listen very closely to the table talk.
Right.
Watch the body language. Have your players recap last session. They will emphasize what they liked, not necessarily what you liked. So with that, that's great for in-person campaigns. However, even in my groups, I've had a hard time with the recapping. Most of my players don't tend to want to recap it. They almost view it as a chore most of the time, even though I reward them for doing it. But at the same time, like, for example, my BlackRock game that we were supposed to play this Saturday, but one of our players can't make it. We have one player who loves to do the recap because he likes the reward. He's very much views it more of a game rather than the role play aspect. He's getting better though. So he likes it because he gets that mechanical advantage, with inspiration. I struggle reading body language in game because I get so wrapped up in what I'm doing. And I don't know about other people. Obviously, I know what cues to look for. I'm a trained salesperson. I've done car sales, real estate. I've got 6 years of experience under my belt in sales. So I understand reading people's body language and matching it. But when I'm running a game, I get so into what my notes are and like all the stuff over here that I can't do it. It's too much for me. What about you? I mean, you're probably really good at it. I mean, you've been for decades.
I will say that I kind of incorporates a little bit of all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. Like I try to actually, this is funny. I use a lot of sports analogies, but I'm not a sports guy.
Oh, I am.
It's that's the thing. It's that makes it a little bit strange. I'm really like, I couldn't tell you, who the lead players are, even in my hometown teams. Like I'm shamefully not a good sportsman, but I think from a teaching perspective, I like to use the sports analogies. So, I look at it as like at the table, I'm kind of the head coach, and the more experienced people are kind of like assistant coaches or team captains. And then everybody else is part of the team. I think what I try to do is suss out what the characters can do. So if somebody built a character who has specific skill sets, I try to think of an encounter that will engage those skill sets for each person, right? This allows, a lot of old school D&D players, for example, will never take social skills. If they're even willing to play 5th edition with proficiencies, they won't bother with charisma or persuasion, deception, or intimidation because they're like, that's a waste of time. You just kill things. Well, not in my campaign, right? Like, and same thing with knowledge-based skills. And in fact, this harkens back to our previous discussion about video responses. XP to level 3, Jacob Buds made a video that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it was like, intelligence is dumb.
All of his videos?
Intelligence is dumb. And I was like, no, it's not. So, but the response was basically, it's only dumb if the DM doesn't engage those skills, right? But if you have a lot of like opportunities for people to make, arcane, history, nature, medicine checks, that lore can actually be helpful to the storyline of the game,
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like looking at you're fielding this team. You want to engage every player and give them all an opportunity to shine in the spotlight. Definitely agree with the whole listening to them, because I think, sometimes you don't read the table right. And, if you're defensive about your DMing skills, you'll never learn from that, so you have to take the hard hits. I'll give a personal example. I was fortunate enough to be invited to a charity fundraiser to play D&D at the Gygax house in Lake Geneva. And we did all the video for it. And when it was my turn to DM, I had crafted what I thought was going to be this excellent adventure with just the right mix of, intrigue, mystery, social interaction, and combat and encounters. Well, the pacing of the game was off. My game was off. And I went too long with the intrigue and mystery and social interaction. And it basically became like a mystery dinner theater of D&D, and we never really got to the combat.
Right.
And I could tell that several of the players were like bored. So that was on me. It's not on them. I didn't pace myself right. I didn't get into the combat that they were looking forward to, and the labyrinth and the traps and all the traditional dungeon crawl kind of stuff. And they were bored. But, I think it's hard. And it's especially for newer DMs, it's really hard to read the table, to be improvisational and reactive, but also to kind of drive a storyline along while you're trying to do all these things. There's a lot of multitasking that goes on.
One of the things I do try to do in campaigns is so you could probably see this if you watch my Forgotten Throne game. We started it in October. It ended pretty recently, but I tried to let my players dictate a lot of stuff. One of the things I've been working on over the years is the whole sandbox concept, and letting my players have a lot of agency, but still putting stuff out there for them to bite on. And that campaign started with one idea, and it went a little bit different. Not as much as some of my other campaigns, but I feel like as things went on, they started becoming less combat oriented in some ways. We still did combat, but we had like a couple sessions here and there where we would go a session or two without any combat. And it seemed like that's what the players wanted. And, I think at one point though, towards the end, I think some of the stuff fizzled out. Some of the interest did wane. And it was hard because it was online for me to pick up on that. And I don't think my players vocalized that either. I would ask them personally one-on-one, like, what do you think? I was trying to get feedback because I wanted to make sure everyone had a good time. But I think maybe there were a couple players who wanted more combat in some instances, other players who didn't. And so I think at times I didn't have the right mix to even satisfy everybody in the group, consistently. So, and we lost 2 players, then we added a new player, and then, it wasn't working, so we ended it. It's tough. I'm not, especially online, since most of my games are online, I cannot read the room. I just blatantly can't. I ask my wife for feedback on all of our in-person games. We usually talk for like an hour after a game. And I get some good feedback from her. I then try to go back and view my stream at those points to figure out, okay, is what she's saying right? Am I just not understanding it? And there have been times where I agree, and there have been times I don't agree with the take, but I still try to take that constructive criticism and apply it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to. Like I'm humble, but I also know my worth. I'll put it to you that way. So, but I have played in campaigns run by people with just as much or more experience than me, where I was bored out of my mind because their stuff was absolutely predictable. And I've seen people lauded as great GMs on streams who I felt like it wasn't that great. But I think the biggest thing harkens back to what you just said about being willing to evaluate yourself and take feedback from your groups and learn from that and improve your game, which I mean, a big part of the sandbox concept involves being reactive, right?
Yes.
You know, and a
You
lot of
throw
people
some
ask,
stuff out there, but then you
right?
wait where they go with it. Yep.
You know, a lot of people will ask, how do I have all these shows with interconnected storylines, and how do I keep track of it all? Well, because it's not a book. It's not, there's no one way to do it. I know my world, and I know what happens in that living world. So that's why the players can do anything. I mean, the first episode of season 2, they were invited to a banquet, and they decided to poison the Reeve and rob him and burn down his house. Like, total murder hobo move, right?
Right.
And like, I couldn't have prepared for that, so I rolled with it, you know?
Yeah.
But like, that sequence of events and other character and player, you know, choices influence what happens in the game. You have to be reactive to it. You have to assess, you know, where you're at with stuff. All right, totally different pace, topic, question.
Okay.
What is one of your favorite go-to monsters on the lower level tiers?
For 5e, it's kobolds. I think kobolds are like, pack tactics is so great. Everyone, when they see a kobold at first, they're like, oh, not a problem. But at low levels with pack tactics, it's great. My wife's over here shaking her head like, yeah. What? Then you get screwed. She used a different word, but
give me an example of where you used kobolds effectively, or if you used them in maybe a different way where you felt like it was kind of a refreshing encounter and people seemed to enjoy it.
Paula might remember this. So it wasn't low level. I think we were like level 6, or the players were. My first campaign that Nate from WASD 20 played in, it was non-streamed. It was in person, and we had players going up to an elemental temple in the mountains. And so they had to climb and things like that. Well, as they're climbing, a couple of them got up top, and they got ambushed by kobolds, like a lot of kobolds. And so some people were still climbing and really far down the cliff. A couple people were on top. And I think we knocked a couple players down, like where they should have been dead if I was hitting them while they were down. But I was a nice DM back then, and I did pull punches in that regard. Not necessarily fudging rolls, but I would be like, oh, they're down. They'll move on to the next person. Or I think at that moment I said, oh, they don't see anybody up here, so all they're trying to do is take away their stuff and go back into their little holes. And then the rest of the players got up there. But then once all the players were up there, they actually started kicking their butt. So me being me, I threw an extra like another wave of kobolds just for the hell of it. Yeah. They used to joke, because that's what I did. I threw waves all the time back then. But that was my way of making it an easier encounter, but then still having a bunch. Right.
And that's kind of cool that you were using them, and it was a fun and effective encounter even at mid-level, right? Because I think, like you said, a lot of people, you know, they write off kobolds as like, you know, one swing and they're dead. But when you got a pack of them and then waves of packs, then
I think we had like 16 maybe in the first wave. It was a lot. And that's why they dropped real quick, the players did. And then once the rest got up there, and I think Nate was playing a cleric, so I want to say he healed them to get them back up. And then area of effect, and boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh, now that you've used your spells, now let's throw that second wave.
Nice.
So that's probably my favorite low-level monster in 5e.
I think I'll stick with Orc.
Okay.
I think the reason why I like Orcs is because they're one of those things that can be anywhere.
Yeah.
You could bring Orcs into dungeons, into ruins, into the woods, into a swamp, into the desert, you know. Like humans, basically they're around. And the other thing is, you know, and this kind of, I didn't mean for it actually, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's one of those questions that's kind of coming up in the community and in the Twitter sphere.
I was going to ask, because I did see someone ask that earlier, and I did want your take on it.
Yes. So, like, what do you think about Orcs and Drow being rewritten, you know, so that they're not inherently evil? And, here's the thing. Like, it doesn't bother me because I was already doing that. Like, and not just me, like a lot of people were already doing that. R.A. Salvatore's, you know, lead character Drist is you know, the archetype for what if a drow wasn't inherently evil, you know? Okay, that's been around for like 30 years. Like I don't want to get up and ruin the stream, but like I'm literally looking at my copy of the Crystal Shard over on the shelf,
right,
covered in dust.
Yep.
You know, but I mean, like, and then good orcs, or, you know, orcs with more noble morality, like that's been around.
We
So
actually,
I don't,
in our Forgotten Throne campaign, one of the characters was a half orc, and he wanted to play a very noble, honorable half orc. And he said, "Is this in your setting?" And I said, "You know what? It is now. Write it up for me how it works."
yeah,
And so he sent me something. I said, "Great." And so now your father was a really high end guard for the kingdom, well respected, you know, like all this stuff. And we worked it into my setting, and now I have a huge aspect of that. Because I did play the stereotypes a lot, to be honest.
right.
But when people played a character that was a half orc, I'm like, all right, let's play it as a good one. I'm cool with that. And I don't play the racism card in my games. Like, oh, you're a dwarf, you're hated by these elves necessarily.
Yeah,
I
do.
I might at times, but it's not a common thing in my
Right.
games. Yeah.
I think what I do is I try to understand, like, so it's one thing if a character is going to play against type. That's been around for a while, right?
Yeah.
That was like the first iteration of this. But I know that I'm not the only DM who has played against type with these things with more than just one hero. You know what I mean? Like I've had orc packs who were not inherently evil. They were literally just like, hey, we're trying to survive. Like that was it, you know? And I mean, I've been doing that for years, so I don't think it's a big deal. And I don't know why anybody needs to be butthurt about it. Like, you play your game the way you want to play it. If you decide that you want orcs and drow to just be totally evil in your game and your group of people are down with that, fine.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you want to have some, you know, flexibility or variation in your interpretation, you could do that with anything. You know, you could say that I don't know, that there's a whole group of vampires who aren't inherently evil, you know, that they're just cursed and they're just trying to survive, right? Like,
well, it's just flavor. What the stuff they're talking about is the flavor text. Like, I have a feeling we're going to see in the next edition or a few editions, or alignment's going to be gone. I think it's going to go to the whole background, like bonds, ideals, flaws, things like that actually makes your character unique, and how they handle moral situations.
I made a video about alignment that's on the channel, and it's basically, I wasn't taking a position per se, but I was showing how it's changed over iterations, right? And I read through the amount of content in the first edition AD&D Player's Handbook and DM's Guide, and then compared that to fifth. And it's just over the editions, alignment has become less and less important.
Yeah, and I like that direction, personally.
Yeah, and because here's the thing. I grew up playing in games where alignment was very important in first edition. Like, it had a mechanical impact, right? Yes. There was weapons and armor and magical items that were affected by your alignment, and spells that were very focused on alignment, right? And certain things that were accessible only if you were a certain alignment. Well, half the time, people didn't role play their characters in that alignment consistently anyway, right? So like, you'd have this lawful good paladin who was a total fucking murder hobo. Like, you know, so to me, your alignment in my game is how you play your character.
Yes.
It's all about the role playing. And those bonds, ideals, flaws, those are just additional tools that 5e came up with to help people role play their characters. But in the end, all this comes down to is how well somebody and how effectively somebody and consistently somebody plays their character. That is what determines their character's behavior, morality, all that stuff, man. So, all right, we did have a solid question, though.
Which one was that? The orc off?
For Juce and Bill, who does the better in-character NPC orc voice?
Guess first.
I think it depends on where the orc is located. You know, sometimes I have orc voices that are basically just low human voices. And then sometimes I give them a little bit of like a vaguely Germanic.
See, I don't do accents.
Eastern European accent. I don't know. Sometimes I just make that shit up.
I was going to say, so because this is a stream, if I did an orc voice, I would probably be able to do it better now than I would ever do it in a game. But I don't do voices usually in my games. I'll change like my pitch or the way I talk more than anything. But like if I was doing an orc right now, I'd be like, "What up? I am Grongnard. I am the old school gamer orc." That's how I would talk for this. That's as good as
that's literally like what every orc sounded like when I was growing up. Like
right.
in
World
the
of
80s,
Warcraft.
like all the DMs would do orcs as like that guy's voice.
Yep.
Which I would do, and then I'd like cough and choke as my throat was bleeding from trying to do that. So I ended up doing kind of the, just well, I actually developed a voice for one of the races in my original world.
Oh, nice.
Which aren't like orcs. But it's very distinct in the positioning of the chin. So you have to like jut out your chin.
So you have the underbite
as far as you can. So your lower lips are, it's kind of, it is this voice. And there's a lot of shushing sounds because they speak like this. So, I'll throw that into orcs sometimes. But I don't know, man. A lot of times the encounters don't make it that far into social interactions.
Right.
A lot of times it's the orcs get killed before they can bark off orders,
I have a player in a couple of my games, and she doesn't let me do any monologues at all. Like they get shot, like first sentence in, shot. She's so she played.
Wait, is that your wife or is that somebody else? Okay.
It's my friend Tom's wife. He's actually in Chicago as well, but he played in my Forgotten Throne game, and she joined like the last few sessions as an arcane archer, and so I had her retainers as she went to the dungeon got tied up, and he held them at knife point. Well, she had the ability to bypass cover, and so she's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it." I said, "Well, if you roll a natural 1, you're killing your retainer, right?" She's like, "Yeah, I'll do it anyway," because 5% chance.
Right.
Did like 60 point of damage, due to an action surge, killed him.
Yeah.
I was like, damn it. And she carried that on to a couple other encounters. And she's joining my BlackRock game since it's online due to COVID. Her and Tom are joining that. So we have 5 players. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same thing. No monologues.
Yeah. Well, and
I play in other
honestly,
games with her sometimes too, off
like,
stream, and she's like that.
When you look at some of the adventure content, the published content, where they give you the monologue, basically they give you the gist of what the NPC should be saying, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it is like straight out of a movie, where like, who in their right mind would let this evil person talk for this long without rolling initiative, like,
right.
But I think orcs to me are flexible, kind of like with you and kobolds, where you could use them at a lot of different levels. But
yeah.
I think you could give them, interesting quirks. You can make them, not necessarily adversaries all the time. They could be kind of reluctant allies or sources of information, or, just people who are just trying to survive with their pack and, make it a little more complex. But that's definitely one of those things that kind of touches on some of the trending topics being discussed, same with drow, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The game I run for my 9-year-old daughter, I had a goblin in like one of her first encounters, and she befriended him right away. So I just was like, "Oh, he's a barbarian, and he's your friend now."
Yeah.
So now she travels with a barbarian goblin.
Yeah, and like the I don't want to do, well, this isn't really spoilers because it happened a couple episodes, but in one of the D&D with high school shows, the Vixens, they, again, with this open world sandbox concept, they, instead of fighting the goblins, persuaded them to join them. And basically, long story short, Abby's character, Tetra, this druid, becomes the mother goblin, high priestess to the goblins kind of thing.
I love it.
Which, wasn't my intent, but you rolled with it, and they had a great time, and it ended up kind of delving into the next part of the storyline pretty effectively. And it gave some meaning to, this desire that she had, this crazy desire to be the goblin mother.
That would be cool as a player, to be in a group where now you've got like your own little tiny goblin tribe serving you.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, what I tried to do was give it that, right? But then also challenge her, because, okay, now they're serving you, but you're their leader. You have to take care of them. You're responsible for the goblins. You can't just send them up like cannon fodder to die at the hands of the giants. Which, to her credit, she was very protective of her goblin children. But I think it's one of those things where, again, kind of going back even to what we were saying before, reading your table, kind of assessing what people wanted and being reactive.
Yeah.
I like to win at D&D, and it's not it's not a popular thing. Like, most people are like, well, Dungeons and Dragons isn't a game that you play to win. I beg to differ. When every time I play the game, I play to win.
Do you get upset when your characters die?
No. Well, only if they die stupidly.
Okay.
Like, and even then, I'm more usually disappointed in myself. I have had some of my favorite characters had epic deaths.
Yeah. And
are still talked to about, like things that happened in the 80s and 90s are still discussed over beers with old friends. So yeah, I am fine with dying if it means that it was a good death and a great story. So I think, but like winning in games, D&D, Cthulhu, whatever it is, to me, it just means that you're having the best time playing this character in this game. That's winning, and every time I play to win. Like, I want to have fun playing the game. Now, if I'm challenged and defeated, or I defeat myself with some stupid decision and the DM rightly kills me because that's what was realistic, I'm fine with that.
Right.
What I will say I don't like is the DM approach where they look at winning as I must kill the party. Because I think in my decades of experience, that doesn't make for a long-term good vibe at your table.
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I play up the adversarial DM a little bit. I'll be like, oh man, like if I think I have some really tough encounters, I'll tell the players at the start of the night, I'm like, I don't know if you guys are going to make it tonight. It might be kind of fun to kill off some of you guys. I'll joke.
But that's okay. I don't do
it on purpose to kill.
Right. Them. But that's okay because first of all, you prefaced it.
Yes.
Like explaining, like warning them.
Yeah. And so now they might run if they see a large creature.
Run away or sneak away or beg for your life and donate your soul, whatever it takes. Like, I mean, I literally, in an ongoing campaign, my character became a multi-class warlock, not because I wanted to but because it was the only way I was coming back to life.
Yes.
And my soul was owned by the Pact of the Fiend, which sucked because I was a good guy.
Yep.
No.
But it tells a good story.
Descent into Avernus for anybody, but I was able to be redeemed. So now I have a warlock patron who is a celestial. So I'm back to being good. But but yeah, I mean, that whole sequence went from like, I love this character to God, I hate this character and maybe I should just kill myself and make a new one to I love this character again.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to write it out.
I 100% agree.
All right. So as a player, here's my next follow-up question. What is your least favorite class to play as a player?
Wizard. I have no interest in playing a wizard at all. Now, well, that's not true. I want to play a mountain dwarf wizard so that I can wear medium armor for the first few levels, and then I want to take heavy armor. I was just talking about this, I think, on my Discord. And I think that would be fun because, again, I'm not playing a wizard like a wizard. I would use a battle axe, I would have medium armor, and I wouldn't even look like a wizard.
That's, that's a hell of a twist, Juice.
I got the idea originally from Dave from Nerdarchy like 5 years ago.
Yeah. I also, it's funny because when you said wizard, that like, I can't even tell you the last time I played. I mean, I'm not joking when I say I think the last time I played a wizard in D&D was 2nd edition in the late 80s.
Right.
Like and part of it's laziness, man. Like, I don't want to have to manage spells known and spell slots and spells. Like,
see, I don't mind that.
What's funny is I don't mind a cleric, a druid, a warlock, a bard. Like,
that does all
but
the same.
For some reason, to me, wizard is just like, I don't know.
It's because of the payoff. So for me, a wizard seems like vanilla. It's still a flavor that people like. It's just not a flavor that's my favorite. There's just nothing exciting about a wizard for me. I mean, yeah, they get a lot of spells, a lot of cool spells. They just, I feel, even if you take the different schools or whatever, I don't even know what it is in 5e because I've never even fully read the class. It feels the same. When I've had a wizard, it doesn't matter which one they took. It felt the same to me when I've got two different wizards in a party, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's not cool with me. If you would have asked me that same question back in like 2013, Cleric would have been up there for me. But since Cleric and 5e has become one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Cleric because Cleric has always traditionally been the class that the last person into the group makes because they're the last person into the group. Like when you're doing the whole like, all right, we're going to start a new campaign, everybody make a character. The person who is the last person in the group gets stuck with the Cleric because they're like, dude, we need a healer. Come on. And everybody else is like, everybody else is a rogue, a fighter, or whatever. And then somebody's like, well, I guess I'll take one for the team and be the Cleric. Like, I'm not joking when I say that's decades of D&D in my experience.
That sort of happened in my Tomb of
Annihilation. And I always loved Clerics. I loved Clerics.
Yeah. That sort of happened to me in the Tomb of Annihilation game that we play that my wife runs. We're playing with her brother, his wife, and their son. And I was like, I'll play whatever. It doesn't matter. And so we have a wizard who's her brother. His wife is playing a paladin. She typically plays clerics, and that's the only thing she's ever played for like 40 years in D&D. But she was like, I'm going to try something different and made a paladin, right? Her son is a monk, which they all didn't understand how a monk worked. And then I was like, I don't know what to make. They're like, well, we need a healer. You should be a cleric. I said, I'll play cleric because I like clerics, but I'm not going to be your heal bot. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, you'll see. And I made a Storm Tempest cleric, Blue Dragonborn. And my main, I don't even think I took healing at first. And they were like, well, you need to heal me. And they got so mad to the point that the paladin became the healer. And I'm like, we don't need a healer. Just let's play. Let's have some fun. Do what you want. But don't worry about the healing. Like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then that cleric died anyway. So
right. And like, I think in time what I developed, and I mean, it's been a while. Somewhere around 3rd edition, when I started DMing again, I said to people, just make what you want.
Yes.
And I will balance the party with NPCs who become your friends. Like,
yes, I tried to do
and that way, you know, if you were like, let's get stupid and just make a whole party of monks, then great. You know, I'll have somebody be your friend who's a cleric and another friend who's a wizard and whatever. You know, or if
Pathfinder does cool stuff with that. I don't know if you've looked at 2nd edition at all. They encourage in the DM's guide or Game Mastery guide to, if you have players, like if you're missing a few different roles, allow them to what's called dual class. So they level up 2 classes. So they have at least the ability to do maybe healing and fighting, or, you know, some of the rogue skill stuff, or, you know, whatever. Right. Which I think is cool. And I've done that.
And I think another solution in any system is, you know, just saying, hey, we're going to start a campaign at level 5 and you could be multi-classed. Yep. So then you have, you know, with the gathering of old men that I play with on a semi-annual basis, you know, we're usually, it's great role playing, but they're also like me. They've been playing for decades. So every character they build is just optimized out the ass, right? Like, you know, the ranger rogue who can do 800 damage with a longbow because he's a, you know, sniper and, you know, whatever. But like, I think it's just fun to be able to play a class because you want to play that class and not feel obligated to have party balance. So as a DM, that's one of the tips that I do is I just tell people, make what you want to make. I will sort out how you all, you know, are going to work together and fill in the gaps with NPCs. And then people enjoy themselves, you know?
Yeah. I find even doing, because I do the same thing. I've always done that. It doesn't matter. Players still say, well, we need a healer. They still do the same conversation. Even though I say, guys, just play what you want. Don't feel pressure to fill a role. Like, do what you want. Even the last player is like, yeah, no, I should make a healer because we need a healer. I'm like, you don't have to. I still see it all the time.
Yep. Yeah, and it's, you know, there are so many ways around it too with 5th edition. You know, if somebody has the feat that allows them Magic to initiate? Heal,
or the
there's that one. The healer feat that allows them to use kits. The healing kits. Like that is crazy how much you can do with that. Like You know, and then plus sometimes it's good to not have a healer in the party because it kind of slows the party down a little bit, makes them think a
Yes.
little more carefully about avoiding damage, about when they're going to strategically use their rests and use their hit die to restore hit points during rest, that kind of stuff. So
It forces creative role play.
yeah,
Like, oh, yeah, these are low level goblins, but maybe we should sneak around them because we might fight a big boss later and we need our hit points and our resources.
excellent point. All right, final question as we approach the nearly 2-hour mark of our epic discussion. Favorite non D&D game to play, follow up, favorite non D&D game to run. You can go first, my friend.
So I'm really getting into second edition Pathfinder right now. I haven't played it yet. We are gearing up for a game on July 11th on my channel, and I'm loving what I've read so far. So I have a feeling as a player, this may end up being my favorite game to play.
Okay.
I'm trying to grasp the idea of running it because obviously it's a little crunchier than I'm used to over the last 5 years. And I think it won't be that bad once I've experienced it a little. So it might take that mantle. But if I have to choose something right this moment to run, I would probably say a rules loose Palladium game would be one of my favorite non-D&D games to run.
When you say Palladium, do you mean Palladium Fantasy, Juice?
So I have played that. I've never run that, I don't think. But I would say more like Heroes Unlimited. I like the SDC world more than the MDC. But Superheroes is kind of fun to run for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would probably play some Rifts too, but I'd have to tweak how MDC works and stuff. And again, it's not about the rules, I think. I like, so for example, with the Heroes game, I love the customization when you include all the Powers Unlimited books with the core book. And so you can make any hero you want. Like any hero you can think of. Now, they're not going to have the strength of Superman, you know, but again, it's ignoring the rules a lot of times. So I would say if your guy is super, super strong, I'm going to let you pick up that house and rip it out of the ground or stop the meteor from smacking the planet or whatever. I'm going to let you feel epic. So I like the customization of that. With Rifts, I like the setting. I do like the lore of the setting, the coalition. So even running something like that, but again, ignoring a lot of the rules of it, especially skill selection sucks in all those Palladium games. I like to run it though. But again, it's more of, I can't run it with a rules purist of Palladium books. They wouldn't like playing it. But I've had some fun games over the years.
I think, you know, it's hard for me over the history of gaming to pick out what I prefer to run the most that isn't D&D. I would narrow it down to one of the White Wolf games like Vampire or Mage, or just a general World of Darkness that incorporates all of those things.
Yeah.
Or Call of Cthulhu. Because both of those had a tremendous impact on me in terms of storytelling and crafting a world, crafting a storyline and a narrative with recurring characters and plot lines that overlap and intertwine. And I think that World of Darkness, more so because of the very streamlined system, made it easier to focus on narrative than mechanics. Now, as a player, I don't think that I've ever had more fun as a player than playing Gamma World, which in its heyday, you know, in the 80s was neck and neck, you know, with D&D for how much me and my friends played it, and the amount of hours and hours, you know, when you're a kid and you have disposable time and you could spend 16 hours per weekend playing stuff, you get through some serious campaigns. And I mean, the lore that we created in our Gamma World campaigns, I could probably take and create and write a book on. But that in terms of having fun as a player, I think, you know, in a non-D&D game, Gamma World, but for running it, I would say probably the World of Darkness or Cthulhu stuff.
Well, so speaking of which, what about a game you haven't played? Maybe you own it, but you've never played it or run it. What do you think would be one you'd want to run or play?
Okay, so there are a lot of those. As you know, time is a commodity. And I have played Pathfinder, and I did deeply enjoy Pathfinder.
Yes.
There was a time between 3.5 and 5th where we dipped into 4th edition. We played a little bit, and it just wasn't jiving for our group. I mean, I still had fun, but I was like, eh. And we played Pathfinder, and it was great. And I had an awesome Oracle, and it was just an epic adventure stretched out over multiple sessions. It was awesome. Gotcha. So I do enjoy Pathfinder, but in terms of a game that I've never played that I would love to play, I think there's two schools for me. There's newer games and older games.
Yes.
A lot of people have told me that I would love Monty Cook games like Numenera that I've never played.
I played it once. It was fun.
Yeah. Or
I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but I really did.
Right. And then what's the newer one that came in the huge box that was people were blowing up all the time?
I don't know.
Maybe somebody Invisible Suns.
Oh, okay.
I got to kind of do a playtest before the box arrived, and it was kind of cool. So
yeah.
But I would say then in terms of not newer games, Lamentations of the Flame Princess is a game system that's basically old school Renaissance. You know, it's basically like old school D&D. And I think it'd be cool to play in that because it combines a little bit of the Call of Cthulhu, World of Darkness horror with fantasy kind of D&D tropes. Yeah. So, Shalendor said Cipher system. That's the Monty Cook thing.
Yeah, that's the core system of it, and you can play.
But then Numenera is Numenera like a fantasy?
System. It's almost like post-apocalyptic kind of. So like the ciphers that you'll find, you might go to a swamp and find like the GM will explain what you're seeing in this old building, and it's got bright lights when you turn it on, and it's got all these weird buttons on the side that you can push, and when you push it, this canister drops out of the bottom, and you don't know what it does. And it's like a soda can of Coke Zero,
right.
Of course.
Right.
But like you might have like an actual like belt buckle that you push, and it turns the floor transparent, and you can see through it, or you might fall through it, or you just these weird off the wall like mechanisms that have been. The idea is they're so old that nobody knows what they do. It's actually really cool for the new aspect.
I mean, as I mentioned, Gamma World, I love post-apocalyptic games. And I've seen, if I want you to read the comments, Shalendor said Cipher system is such a fun system. Somebody mentioned Palladium and Shadowrun. Shadowrun was another great system that I enjoyed many games in.
I've never played it. I've only played like 15 games ever.
Yeah.
But I've talked to a lot of people about a lot of other games. Roll Stats is a huge OSR type of fan. He likes old school D&D, more lethal games. I think from what we've discussed, lower magic.
Only because I happen to be near the shelf of ancient things, and because Shalendor mentioned this. Behold, Twilight 2000.
Oh.
This was a box set game that came out from Game Designers Workshop with very realistic and...
Is that like Vietnam?
No, it's actually... It's funny because I think it was supposed to be set in the mid-90s. Like it was one of those games that came out in the 80s where it was like, the Russians are going to take over the world and this is Twilight 2000, you know? So it's a little bit like what I would call near post-apocalyptic where like, you know, the war is still kind of ongoing, but so much has changed and there's been a breakdown in countries and stuff like that. But I still have it. We played it back in the day. And it was a super complex, but also very realistic system that had a lot of content related to like military weaponry and armored vehicles and stuff. And it was crazy detailed.
Yeah.
But World War III, Shalendor says, yeah, basically. Now it's kind of dated, almost like watching, Escape from New York or Escape from LA, where it's like,
Yeah.
1994, and the island of Manhattan has been turned into a prison colony. But I still eat up all those old tropes and, post-apocalyptic things.
Yeah,
As cheesy as some of them are, I love that stuff. And it, when I developed my gaming system, one of the things that I said to myself was, I wonder if I can make a gaming system that works in any genre.
I think that's my mindset on a lot of stuff too.
Right. So I built the system to test with post-apocalyptic, and then I played fantasy versions of it. And then I've been doing modern horror versions of it. And so far, so good. I mean, it does require like addendum rules for certain settings, right? Like in some settings, having a sanity statistic doesn't really matter. But if you're playing modern horror, it probably does,
Right. Actually, that'd be kind of cool in a post-apocalyptic or even, like a war type setting, messing with that PTSD
and a lot of them I found, and a lot of them I found really good crossover opportunities. So
that's cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think, you know what, bottom line is we've had a great discussion. I think that I appreciate you having me on, and I think it's awesome for us to be able to connect like this, even during the quarantine, and with Gen Con having been canceled and other conventions having been canceled. I think a lot more people now more than ever are gaming together online. And
100%.
My motto has always been that I started playing games when I was a little kid, that playing role-playing games has benefited my life in numerous ways, encouraging me to learn, have an interest in growing my passion for reading and history and world language and culture and religion and all these other things that were spokes that were spurned into interest by playing in role-playing games and across genres. And even, in terms of meeting and interacting with other people. We live in a digital age. We're on screens all the time. And if someday, folks, will get through this quarantine and we'll be able to play at tables together again. And that's what this is about, really. For me, I'm sure it is for you, because it circles back to what we both talked about, being community.
Yes.
And we all, as human beings, need face-to-face interaction. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, you still need to get together with people. And role-playing games are a great way to do that, to get together with people, to explore ideas and get creative and have fun. That's why I do it. That's why I've done it. That's why I've taught my kids to do it. I'm glad to hear, Juce, that you got your wife and kids involved too, because it's great family.
My wife got me into D&D.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't play D&D. I played Palladium from 97 to 2010. And then I met her, and she played 2nd edition growing up, and we had no idea until we moved in together. It was great.
Yeah. And that's a prime example. Like, there are so many more people now than ever before, as we are in this role-playing game renaissance.
Yes.
In the 80s, you were either a gaming nerd and you were just out of the closet and you were probably bullied for it, or you were in the closet and you would never tell anyone that you secretly played role-playing games with your friends, because it would be the same as saying that, like, you're 15 and still play with your Star Wars guys. But
I played with wrestlers, so I was like 18.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think we're in a world now where gaming is, it's more out in the open. It has higher visibility. It has higher acceptance, in the zeitgeist of our culture. But, like, bottom line is it's just a cool thing to do with friends, with family, to get together with people face to face and use your minds and unlock the imagination and have some fun being creative. So it's been awesome, dude. And I miss seeing you in person. We will have to get together at a convention in the future.
We will.
But, for sure.
Next year's going to be huge, man.
Yeah.
We got Nerdarchy convention. You got Gen Con, whatever number now, 55 or something, whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great year next year.
Yeah. And 2020 has been rough, but we're all hoping that 2021 is going to be better. And, but all you guys that tuned in for the live chat and gave us great feedback and questions, thanks for doing that. And if I haven't said it already, because I know I did it in the chat, but make sure you support my guy Juce, because he puts out a ton of great stuff and he is an awesome part of the community. So make sure you subscribe and like, and
Thanks,
spread the word. And one of these days, dude, I'm going to play in one of those one-shots with you online.
Dude, I'm open to playing more games too. Like, one of the things I've put out to my community is if anyone wants to run games, I'll stream it preferably, but if not, that's fine. I want to play more games. So
Yeah.
I keep my Fridays open to play games. So if anybody wants to run a game, we can do that. And maybe me and Bill can play in it together. Maybe a Call of Cthulhu game or something.
Yeah. There you go. That'd be fun.
So I agree. Thanks again, Bill. Again, same thing towards Bill. Go subscribe if you're not yet. I'm sure most of you are. Bill's awesome, and you'll probably see him at a lot of gaming conventions. So again, love Bill. He's great. So with that, This is Master the Game. Game on.